This is the Pedagogy Primer podcast focused on the basics for teaching in higher education. I'm Mark Gallimore, Director of COLLI, or the Center for Online Learning and Innovation at Canisius College. Canisius is a private Jesuit university located in Buffalo, New York. We're called the Golden Griffins, or Griffs, and in accordance with our Jesuit values, we try to serve and stand with and for others in a global community committed to peace and justice. My job at Canisius is to assist faculty, staff, and students to use internet resources for better learning, teaching, and scholarship. Many new full-time and part-time faculty receive little or no pedagogy training during their graduate education, so they seek insights and resources to move beyond their experience as students and teaching assistants. This podcast is to help faculty, and especially new faculty, learn to teach or do better teaching in their courses. COLLI offers other resources for faculty development at www.canisius.edu/COLI. Each episode will cover a specific topic or set of related topics. The podcast is tailored specifically for professors teaching at Canisius College, but a lot is more or less applicable to anyone teaching in higher education. Highlights, relevant links, and suggested resources can be found in show notes. I'm recording this in the COLLI Digital Media Laboratory, which COLLI makes available to faculty and students for recording podcasts. This laboratory was made possible with gracious support by the Canisius Digital Humanities Group, a division of the College of Arts and Sciences, and the Canisius Media Center, part of Information Technology Services here on campus. Right, let's get started. Whether you're teaching for the first time or you've taught in the past, think about how you will communicate with students in your next course. You may not have given this a lot of thought in the past, which is understandable. You have a subject and substance to teach, and lots of focus on procedural matters often seems like a distraction. But the ways you choose to convey instructions and updates to students, and how you want them to contact you, makes a big difference in how your course operates. Intentionally choosing a few reliable communications modes and being consistent about how you use them can make things a lot easier for both you and your students. So let's start with this. Choose a few ways, and only a few ways, to communicate with students. Your options include, but of course are not limited to, announcements in the classroom, paper handouts, documents uploaded to your learning management system, your DOCX files or PDF files, and so on. It could also be cloud storage-based files like Google Docs that you might link in your LMS. In our case here at Canisius College, our LMS is D2L, and indeed we all have Google accounts as well, so do our students. You may build content that is native to the LMS. That is, somewhere you clicked New or Create and you typed stuff in, maybe embedded images, and clicked Publish. And now you've created a web page within the LMS or within a messaging system within the LMS, such as a news feed or announcements feed, serialized content. You may also communicate outside the LMS, but through the internet. The most common example would be email, but maybe even if you have a blog or social media. Now, earlier I said only a few modes of communication. That's important. Pick the most practical for your course. It's tempting to think you can simply repeat yourself in various places, perhaps all of the above that I mentioned. It is hard enough to get students' attention. Why not barrage them with duplicate messages across a range of media? Well, if you supply information across 8, 9, or 10 modes of communication, your students will find it troublesome to keep up with all of them. If you repeat everything across all media, you'll need to remember to copy, paste, format, or change each set of instructions or message of any importance. If you don't, students are bound to occasionally and understandably miss something. The student who didn't get the message that a deadline was postponed because you updated the syllabus but not the assignment instructions, or vice versa, won't be thrilled when she learns that she stressed over meeting the earlier, now canceled deadline. Instead, choose a few ways to communicate information and then tell students what to expect. So in one example, I might tell students that the syllabus contains course-wide policies and is available in the first module within the D2L content area as a PDF file. Specific assignments and activity instructions, readings, and references will also be PDF files in weekly modules within D2L content. That's where students will find assignment collecting drop boxes and online quizzes as well. I also send out a weekly email they'll find in their inboxes by noon on each Monday, which contains brief reminders and additional updates to the course plan as necessary. Any emergency messages, such as class cancellation, will also be via email. I keep grades up to date in the D2L gradebook, but strictly speaking, my students can complete the course by regularly visiting D2L's content area and checking their email. And that's all. They needn't watch the newsfeed on the course homepage, expect to collect and store paper handouts in class, or even hear an announcement in class that isn't also in D2L or the weekly class email. Or here's another scenario. My syllabus has everything, including all instructions for each assignment. It's a hefty, perhaps 20 or 30 page PDF file that I've uploaded in an introduction module in D2L. But beyond that syllabus, everything else is in D2L. In the content area, they see assignment collecting Dropboxes, online quizzes, and online discussion boards. In these tools, I might duplicate instructions for each assignment or discussion. So students have two, but only two places they can find instructions for any assignment, either in the assignment collecting Dropbox itself, for example, or in that big syllabus file. Lastly, I use the newsfeed on the course homepage for quick short-term reminders and course updates. Again, that's all. In this case, they shouldn't expect me to email course plan changes to them, since they should check the D2L course newsfeed on their way into D2L content area several times a week. However you design your course communications, be explicit about this to students from the very beginning. Obviously, this should be outlined in the syllabus. And in the first week of class, open up D2L on screen in the classroom and show them where they can expect to find things. Also, tell them you expect them to check their email and D2L or your LMS regularly. It's not unreasonable for undergraduate students to check email or their LMS 5 days a week during a semester. In general, I try to respond to student emails within 48 hours, although not always on weekends. But I don't expect students to react or respond to my instructions or communications on an unreasonably short notice. Messages bearing on Monday activities or assigning something that's due on Monday shouldn't be posted or emailed Friday afternoon. If you don't want to be answering their emails on weekends, don't expect students to do likewise. However you deliver instructions or updates, here's some general advice. Be thorough but efficient. When writing or rewriting instructions, teachers soon learn to be precise in language, account for details, and in general anticipate student questions. Spend some time on the same kinds of revision you do for published writing elsewhere in your professional life. Intentionally or not, you are modeling behavior when you communicate with students, so spelling, grammar, and attention to detail count. So do other things. You don't need to use bullet points, but remove wordiness, passive voice, and needless information. It's great to add a sentence or two describing the purpose of an assignment, but avoid editorial asides such as complaining about previous student shortcomings when explaining your current attendance policy. The less time they must spend reading procedural instructions, the more time you can expect students to engage with the substance of your course. Your instructions will get better over time if you let student questions, semester after semester, be your guide. No matter how long you spend writing assignment instructions or rubrics, if you're trying a new kind of activity or assignment next semester, factor in a little time to answer emails and maybe make a decision or two when students ask you about possibilities you didn't specifically address or anticipate, or ask you to clarify what you're looking for. At Canisius, some professors create online message boards within their D2L course space that's something like frequently asked questions or just common questions, and urge students to ask questions there if they think the answer might benefit the whole class. Then, the professor directs students to consider this an annex to the syllabus when looking for information. Semester after semester, the professor addresses the last or latest questions when revising the syllabus for an upcoming class. Use consistent language, titles, and phrases. This may seem jargony, but if you define and use specific phrases, including specific punctuation to describe things, you prevent ambiguity. For example, if I have a set of short writing assignments, why not name each Short Writing Assignment 1, Harlem Hellfighters? and Short Writing Assignment 2, Harlem Renaissance, and so on. If my students are completing a historical documentary video project, then I should use the name Historical Documentary Video Project word for word at least once in any place or time I discuss or revisit this assignment. When I build my online gradebook, I should use these titles exactly so there's no question of which assignment is which when students consult their grade report. Similarly, pick some style and formatting, and as far as possible, stick to it. Create a style sheet or template in Microsoft Word or Google Docs with headings, fonts, and spacings and so on to format all your instructional documents. Use headings and choose non-serif fonts, light backgrounds, and high contrast dark text color, since this makes your instructions accessible to those with visual or reading impairments. Now, let's explore some specific modes of communicating. In 2019, lots of paper still moves back and forth in college classes, although it's gradually phasing out. I won't offer a strong defense or criticism of paper handouts in classrooms, but I will say the following. If you have deliberate reasons why you hand out syllabi, assignment instructions, study guides, worksheets, and other course documents on paper, then fine, keep doing it. By deliberate, I mean you think printing and distributing paper documentation helps students learn in ways that digital delivery cannot. On the other hand, if you do it because you think learning to transmit paper through an LMS would take too much of your time or otherwise do it as an unthinking habit, now may be the time to experiment with an LMS. For example, it's very easy to drag and drop files into D2L's content area where they are visible to your students by default. It will take less time than wrestling with a printer or photocopier or getting things printed through campus administrative staff or print shops. At the very least, if you hand out paper, you should also make the digital copy available in the LMS so students aren't emailing you asking you for the digital copy anyway after they lost the paper copy you gave them. If you do upload files to the LMS, you'll quickly discover a few advantages. Obviously, there's less environmental footprint. Digital means certainly has environmental impact, but paper is probably worse. If students want a paper copy, they can always print it themselves. Anything you put on the LMS once is available to students at any time thereafter, at least during the semester. Here at Canisius, you can copy course content within a D2L space into another class's space the following semester, so you don't even need to upload files each time you teach. If you teach face-to-face or hybrid courses, you will probably rely on making verbal announcements in class. If you don't already, jot down what you say as a script. In fact, make it a digital file with checkboxes accessible on your phone so you can quickly tap off things as you say them. That way you're sure of what you say, and you don't second-guess yourself later. Gosh, did I say that important thing in class, or did I neglect to tell the class that, and now I'm faced with having to move a deadline in order to be fair? You probably can get these notes from some form of documentation you plan to provide students anyway, such as the syllabus, assignment instructions, or a weekly reminder email. Plus, these notes are usable semester after semester. In 2019, probably most Canisius students used an LMS in high school and maybe before that. So don't be surprised if they expect to see course content on the web. If you have no experience with the LMS on your campus, your support staff probably offers on-campus training or some form of tutorial on the web. Here at Canisius, we have both, and you can find links to these on your D2L My Home screen. In D2L, you can actually do more than just upload docx or PDF files. You can create web pages or documents that are native to D2L and the Internet. So to do that, in the content area, click the blue New button and choose Add a File. Rather than fuss with uploading files all the time, this may be more efficient. Remember, it can copy all course content from semester to semester. You can also add descriptive text or images and video that appears below the title of modules and files or other topics in the content area. And lastly, assignment collectors, in D2L we call them Dropboxes, usually have a space where you can post the assignment instructions. So too with online discussion or message boards. D2L has other nifty ways to communicate. I use the newsfeed available on the course's home screen. Here I can create posts similar to a blog that are serialized in reverse order and visible to my students. This way I can skip emailing my students and avoid the occasional weirdness when some students say they didn't receive an email. Of course, I tell my students to check that news feed regularly. D12's Grades tool provides a gradebook. I'll talk about that in another episode in depth, but just to say now, since I need to record and calculate my grades anyway, I do it there so students have a reasonable up-to-date picture of how they're doing throughout the semester. If they come to me to discuss their grade, we don't waste time calculating, but instead move directly to discussing specific grade scores and next steps by the student to get their course grade where they want it to be. Lastly, I'll just mention that LMSs, including D2L, usually have a quick way to email your students as a whole class or as different subsets. In the class list, you can email all students by clicking Email Class List, or you can quickly email multiple students in the same message by checking boxes. Alongside an LMS, email is the other big internet thing faculty spend a lot of time in and through which they communicate to their students. I've known faculty who basically ignore the LMS and try to conduct all web business for their class via email, sending an email 2 and 3 times a week with attached handouts, that sort of thing. Most professors, though, use email for occasional messages to their whole class and as the primary means for one-on-one conversation. If you plan to broadcast content to your students at all via the web, I don't recommend email as the primary way to do this. Wherever you teach, your students receive too much email, I guarantee you, just like you do, and adding to that burden is not promoting engagement with your class. Unlike those properly organized in an LMS space, course materials you distribute by email are removed from any sort of organization scheme that helps students grasp the structure of your class. But email does serve a purpose. Some faculty send a weekly email newsletter to their students that arrives in their inboxes at a regular, predictable time, say Monday morning at noon. If kept brief and consistently structured, it can be a big help to students. You might also broadcast emergency, short notice emails that are most common. The most common example is class cancellation, especially here in Buffalo with severe weather. And email should be the primary way students as individuals contact you outside of the class or office hours on a one-on-one basis. When you send or reply an email, use consistent formatting. Decide if you will address students by their first name or Mr. and Ms. so-and-so, and then stick to it. Write subject lines that are quickly identifiable and concise. For example, HIS 101A, reminders for October or just OCT 24th. Or perhaps ECO 221B, class canceled, Feb 16th. Avoid fancy fonts or backgrounds, as these don't always translate well across email clients and apps. Bear in mind, most of your students are probably reading your email on their phone, not on a laptop screen, at least not the first time. If you are directing students to read a file, put it in the LMS and direct students there rather than attaching it. When emailing a common message to multiple students that in any way discusses or hints at their academic performance, use BCC instead of to. So for example, if I'm emailing 4 students to notify them that I didn't receive a big assignment submission from them, each should not know who or how many other students received that email. When you email multiple students from D2L, it populates their addresses in BCC by default. Just like other course documents, save email text for reuse semester after semester. Boilerplate text can speed up answers to certain questions. So for example, say a student athlete declares that he will miss several classes due to playoff games. His team made the playoffs. You may have a crafted standard reply with what they should expect to do to make up the work, take a missed exam, or get notes or other information from other students. If you find yourself repeatedly sending an email like this, it may be time just to add it to the syllabus. If you're fairly familiar with most of what I've discussed and are looking for something fresh for your course, consider video. Video recording tools have gotten really easy to use in the past several years, and getting video on the internet for your students isn't difficult. D2L and probably other LMSs has a tool to record simple webcam videos. In our case, I have a tutorial in the D2L self-paced training set for using this tool called Video Note. I use screencasts myself. Instead of recording me, they record what I'm doing on my computer screen along with my voice. That way, I can demonstrate to students where to find things in the LMS and in some cases how to use web tools or resources. Here, I use a little screencast tool, in my case called Screencast-O-Matic, but there's a dozen competitors. and I upload it to a YouTube channel that I operate through my Canisius Google account. Typically, I record a weekly reminder video for each week of the semester, and then some specialized tutorials as well. However you do it, if you are consistent, comprehensive, and concise in your communications with students, it will save you time because you need not answer a lot of student questions in emails or questions after class periods. It also reduces the chance of a disagreement with a student who says that your instructions weren't clear or complete. It helps student support officers better assist students. For example, here at Canisius, the Griff Center for Academic Engagement, the Tutoring Center, the Accessibility Support Office, and the Writing Center all provide forms of advice and support for students. Staff in these offices find it easier to help students or hold them accountable if they can clearly understand what you're asking students to do. If a dispute between you and a student escalates to the point where your department chair, program director, or dean is involved, the instructions and communications you composed will be a big factor in determining the outcome. Lastly, I suggest that you seek feedback from students on how well you're communicating. Often standard course evaluations have this as a question, although you can ask students for honest feedback in other ways too. You'll undoubtedly receive contradictory replies, but student feedback can give you direction for further experimentation. So whether you're developing an entirely new course or wish to make a relatively simple, minor change to an existing course, consider how you can make instructions for students easier to access, more consistent, and more comprehensive. Students will spend less time figuring out how the course works and more time on the substance of the course. And this streamlines your administrative workload as well. Thank you for listening to the Canisius Pedagogy Primer podcast. Once again, all relevant links can be found in show notes. For more resources, check out canisius.edu/Kali or find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.